I have spent most of my life watching money, not just how people earn it, but how they quietly lose it. And after many decades, one simple truth has become very clear to me. Most people are not poor because they earn too little. They are poor because they repeatedly buy things that slowly drain their wealth year after year, without them noticing. What makes this dangerous is that these purchases never look dangerous. They look normal. Everyone around you is doing the same thing. Society treats them as milestones of success. And because they feel ordinary, very few people ever stop to calculate what these decisions actually cost over an entire lifetime. If you stay with me, you will not hear a shortcut to wealth. You will not hear promises of fast money. What you will hear is something far more reliable. Simple math, personal discipline, and time. History has always favored these three forces, even when people choose to ignore them. If you want to become wealthy, the most important question is not how much more money you can make. The more important question is what you must stop buying. And the first and most financially destructive purchase for most people today is a brand new car. I am not saying cars are bad. A car is simply a tool. It takes you from one place to another. The problem is not transportation. The problem is buying a brand new car and convincing yourself that it is a reasonable financial decision. The moment you drive a new car off the dealership lot, it loses value immediately. Not in a year. Not in a few months. Instantly. Roughly 10 to 20% of its value disappears before you even get home. Thousands of dollars are gone without anything breaking or wearing out. After that, the process continues quietly. Over the first 5 years, most new cars lose around 60% of their value. A $40,000 car becomes worth $16,000. Not because it failed, simply because time passed. But depreciation is not the worst part. What concerns me more is how people pay for cars. Most do not pay cash. They borrow. And when you borrow money to buy a depreciating asset, you combine two powerful forces working against you at the same time: depreciation and interest. Let's look at the numbers, because math does not argue or exaggerate. A $40,000 car financed over 5 years at 5% interest costs over $45,000 in total payments. When the loan is finished, the car is worth roughly $16,000. That means you paid $45,000 to own something worth $16,000. Nearly $30,000 vanished. Not because of a recession. Not because of bad luck. Simply because you bought a new car. Now consider what very few people are willing to consider: opportunity cost. If that same $30,000 were invested at 10% annually, over 30 years, it could grow to more than $500,000. And this is not a one-time mistake. Most people repeat this decision every 5 to 7 years. Over a lifetime, it happens again and again. Each time, a portion of their future wealth quietly disappears. I have never bought a new car. Not because I could not afford one, but because I never saw a rational reason to do so. A reliable used car gets me to the same destination. But it leaves me with something far more valuable: capital to invest. When you see a car as a tool instead of a symbol, your behavior changes. A car does not make you richer. It does not produce income. It consumes money. Its only job is to do that as efficiently as possible. If you want to build wealth, the first step is not finding better investments. It is stopping the decisions that silently erase your future. For many people, the new car is exactly that decision. The second purchase that quietly destroys long-term wealth is not obvious to most people, because it is often framed as responsible and mature. Buying a home is widely seen as a sign of stability. But buying too much house is one of the fastest ways to become financially trapped while appearing successful on the surface. I am not arguing against homeownership. A home can be a sensible decision when handled correctly. The problem is that most people do not buy a home based on long-term financial logic. They buy based on what a bank tells them they can afford, and those are two very different numbers. Banks do not exist to build your wealth. They exist to earn interest. When a bank approves you for a large mortgage, it is not a statement about what is healthy for your financial future. It is simply a calculation of how much debt you can carry while still making payments. Consider a person earning $100,000 per year. A bank may approve them for a $400,000 home. On paper, this looks reasonable. In practice, it is dangerous. Approval does not mean affordability. It means tolerance for risk, and that risk belongs to the borrower, not the bank. A $400,000 home with a 20% down payment leaves a $320,000 mortgage. At typical interest rates over 30 years, the monthly principal and interest alone approach $1,500. Add property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and repairs, and the true cost rises quickly. What many people fail to account for is that these costs are persistent. They repeat every month, every year, regardless of market conditions or personal circumstances. After taxes, housing can easily consume 40% or more of take-home pay, leaving little room for saving or investing. This is how people become house rich and cash poor. Their net worth is tied up in walls and roofs, but their monthly cash flow is under constant pressure. They may technically own an appreciating asset, but they lack the flexibility that actually creates financial security. I purchased my home decades ago for far less than I could have afforded. Not because I was limiting myself, but because I understood what mattered. The house met my needs. It was comfortable. It was in a good location. Anything beyond that would not have improved my life, but it would have reduced my ability to invest. Housing decisions should be made with restraint, not optimism. A simple guideline is to keep the purchase price well below what a bank offers, ideally no more than 2.5 to 3 times annual income. This leaves room for saving, investing, and absorbing unexpected expenses without stress. The greatest hidden cost of an oversized house is not the mortgage payment. It is the investments you never make because your money is locked into housing costs. Over 30 years, that missed compounding can amount to hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. A home should support your life, not dominate it. When housing consumes too much of your income, it limits every other financial choice you make. Wealth is built through flexibility and patience, not through stretching to the maximum your lender allows. The third purchase that quietly weakens long-term wealth is something many people never question. Brand new furniture and home decor. It feels harmless. It feels smaller than a car or a house. But over time, this category drains an enormous amount of money while providing almost no financial return. Furniture serves a simple purpose. You sit on it. You eat at it. You sleep on it. Beyond that, it does not produce income. It does not grow in value. And yet, people routinely spend tens of thousands of dollars furnishing homes as if it were an investment rather than an expense. A new sofa can easily cost $2,000. A dining set might be $3,000. Bedroom furniture adds several thousand more. Add rugs, lamps, artwork, and decorative items, and it is very common for people to spend $20,000 to $40,000 furnishing a single home. What makes this spending especially dangerous is how quickly it becomes invisible. Purchases are spread out. They do not feel dramatic. But the total adds up quietly, just like interest works quietly in the opposite direction when money is invested instead of spent. Furniture also depreciates. Not as aggressively as cars, but steadily. Once it enters your home, it is no longer new. Styles change. Materials wear out. Modern furniture, in particular, is often built to be replaced rather than repaired. Its resale value drops quickly. Many people justify this spending by saying they want their home to look nice or feel complete. They want to impress guests. They want the showroom feeling. What they rarely consider is whether the feeling is worth the long-term financial cost. There is a different approach, and it is the one consistently used by people who build wealth slowly and reliably. They buy used furniture. They shop at estate sales, thrift stores, and private listings. They look for quality, not novelty. They pay cash and buy only what they need. Used furniture performs the same function as new furniture. A used table still holds meals. A used couch still provides a place to sit. The difference is price. Often, the same item costs a fraction of retail simply because someone else owned it first. Consider the math. If a household spends $30,000 on new furniture, but could have furnished the same space for $10,000 using used pieces, that $20,000 difference matters. Invested at 10% over 30 years, it grows into several $100,000. This is not about deprivation. It is about patience. Wealthy individuals rarely feel pressure to furnish an entire home immediately. They start with essentials. They add pieces gradually. They allow time to work in their favor instead of rushing to meet an artificial standard. Furniture does not care whether you are wealthy or not. It will not reward you for paying full price. But your investment account will reward you for every dollar you choose not to spend unnecessarily. Over decades, those decisions compound into real freedom. The fourth category that quietly erodes wealth is one of the most powerful in modern society. Constantly upgrading technology. New phones, new laptops, new tablets, new devices that promise speed, convenience, and status, but rarely deliver lasting financial value. Technology companies are excellent at creating urgency. Each year brings a slightly faster processor, a slightly better camera, or a new feature designed to make last year's model feel obsolete. The problem is not technology itself. The problem is upgrading out of habit rather than necessity. Most devices today are far more capable than most people need. A phone that is 3 or 4 years old can still make calls, send messages, browse the internet, and run essential applications. Yet many people replace perfectly functional devices simply because something newer exists. $1,000 phone replaced every 2 years becomes a recurring expense that feels small but compounds into something significant over time. What appears to be a harmless upgrade cycle becomes a steady drain on capital that could otherwise be invested. The real cost is not the price of the device. It is the lost compounding. Saving $500 per year by extending upgrade cycles may not feel meaningful in the moment. But over 40 years invested consistently, that money can grow into nearly $1 million. This pattern extends beyond phones. Laptops, televisions, smartwatches, and other gadgets follow the same cycle. Each upgrade feels justified in isolation. Taken together, they form a lifestyle of constant replacement rather than long-term ownership. I have always viewed technology as a tool, nothing more. A tool should be replaced when it no longer performs its job effectively. Replacing it before then is not optimization. It is consumption disguised as productivity. Wealthy individuals tend to use technology until it is genuinely obsolete or broken. They buy previous generation models. They buy refurbished devices. They avoid subscriptions and unnecessary add-ons. They focus on function, not novelty. The discipline here is subtle but powerful. By refusing to upgrade for emotional reasons, you retain capital year after year. That retained capital, when invested, quietly compounds while newer devices quietly lose relevance. Technology is meant to serve you. When your spending on it consistently exceeds its value to your life, it begins to serve someone else instead. Long-term wealth requires recognizing that distinction and acting on it patiently. The fifth category that quietly damages long-term wealth is one people defend emotionally. Luxury experiences. Expensive vacations, premium flights, high-end hotels, and costly entertainment that are justified with phrases like "you only live once" or "memories are priceless." There is nothing wrong with enjoying life. The problem arises when enjoyment is financed at the expense of long-term security. Many people confuse affordability with desire. Wanting an experience does not mean you can afford it, especially when it delays or replaces investing. A luxury vacation can cost $10,000 or $15,000 for a single week. After that week ends, the money is gone. What remains are memories and photographs, and often credit card balances that take months or years to repay. What makes this particularly damaging is opportunity cost. People who claim they cannot afford to invest regularly often have no difficulty affording expensive trips. The issue is not income. It is priority. Temporary pleasure is chosen over permanent financial flexibility. If someone spends $20,000 per year on luxury travel over 30 years, that is $600,000 spent. If even half of that were redirected into investments earning modest long-term returns, the difference would amount to millions. Affordable travel exists. Road trips instead of flights. Modest accommodations instead of luxury hotels. Cooking meals instead of dining out for every meal. These alternatives do not reduce the value of the experience. They simply reduce the cost. Memories are not created by price tags. They are created by people, moments, and attention. Some of the most lasting memories come from simple experiences that require little money but full presence. Wealthy individuals tend to delay luxury until it no longer interferes with their financial foundation. They do not eliminate enjoyment. They sequence it. First security, then comfort, then optional luxury. The discipline here is not about denying yourself joy. It is about choosing which version of joy you want. A brief moment of indulgence today or decades of freedom tomorrow. Time rewards the latter far more consistently. When experiences are chosen carefully and paid for in cash without harming investment habits, they enrich life. When they replace saving and compounding, they quietly steal future choices. That distinction determines whether experiences serve you or cost you. The sixth way people quietly weaken their financial future is by paying for convenience with interest. Credit cards, installment plans, and buy now, pay later arrangements make spending feel painless. The transaction happens instantly while the cost is pushed into the future, where it becomes easier to ignore. Interest works relentlessly against those who use it for consumption. Unlike investment returns, which compound in your favor, consumer interest compounds against you. Even modest balances, carried consistently, can drain thousands of dollars over time without any noticeable lifestyle improvement. Many people focus on monthly payments instead of total cost. A purchase feels affordable because the payment looks small, but the payment hides the full price. When interest is included, the same item can cost significantly more than its original price, often without providing additional value. Convenience spending encourages frequency. Subscriptions, delivery fees, upgrades, and service add-ons feel insignificant individually. But they repeat, and repetition is where real damage occurs. A small cost, multiplied across months and years, becomes a meaningful drag on wealth. Consider a few $100s per month spent on convenience and interest. That amount rarely changes a person's happiness. But invested consistently over decades, it can grow into hundreds of thousands of dollars. The difference lies not in effort, but in direction. Wealthy individuals tend to treat interest with caution. They are willing to pay interest to acquire productive assets, but they avoid paying interest for consumption. They understand that borrowing for something that declines in value creates a permanent headwind. Discipline here is largely invisible. It shows up as fewer impulse purchases, fewer subscriptions, and a preference for paying in full. Over time, that restraint compounds quietly, much like interest does, but in the opposite direction. Convenience feels good today. Control feels good later. Those who prioritize the latter tend to discover that time becomes an ally rather than an obstacle in their financial lives. The seventh mistake that quietly undermines wealth is spending money to signal status. Designer clothing, luxury brands, expensive accessories, and upgrades chosen not for utility, but for appearance. These purchases rarely improve quality of life, yet they consume capital that could have purchased something far more valuable. Status spending is powerful because it feels social. People do not buy these items for themselves alone. They buy them to be seen, to belong, or to avoid feeling left behind. The cost is not just financial. It creates a habit of measuring success by comparison rather than progress. Luxury brands are exceptionally efficient at extracting money without creating value. A logo does not increase durability. A higher price does not guarantee better function. In most cases, you are paying for perception, not performance, and perception has no compounding ability. What often goes unnoticed is repetition. Status items are rarely bought once. Fashion cycles change. Trends shift. New versions appear. The spending repeats while the satisfaction fades quickly. This cycle consumes money steadily while delivering diminishing returns. If a person spends just $3,000 per year on status purchases, the number feels modest. Over 30 years, it becomes $90,000. Invested instead, that same amount could grow into several hundred thousand, even with conservative assumptions. People who build lasting wealth tend to appear unremarkable. They are not trying to impress. They are trying to remain flexible. They understand that wealth is not what others see. It is the freedom to make decisions without financial pressure. Buying time is far more powerful than buying approval. Time gives you options. Time allows mistakes to be corrected. Time allows compounding to do its work. Status does none of these things, no matter how expensive it looks. When you stop spending to signal success, you free up resources to actually create it. That shift is quiet, often invisible to others, but over decades it becomes impossible to ignore. When you step back and look at these 7 spending habits together, a clear pattern emerges. None of them are dramatic. None feel reckless in the moment. In fact, most are socially encouraged. Yet combined, they determine whether money compounds quietly for you or drains quietly away from you. New cars, oversized homes, brand new furniture, constant technology upgrades, unaffordable luxury experiences, convenience funded by interest, and status-driven purchases all share one trait. They consume capital without producing it. They move money in one direction only, away from your future. Each decision on its own appears manageable. The real damage comes from repetition. These choices are not made once. They are made year after year. And repetition is the engine of compounding, whether it is working for you or against you. What makes this especially dangerous is timing. These spending habits usually appear early in adulthood, precisely when time is most valuable. Money spent in your 30s does not just disappear. It removes decades of potential growth that can never be recovered. Most people believe wealth is built through rare, brilliant decisions. In reality, wealth is built through avoiding repeated mistakes. The absence of bad decisions often matters more than the presence of extraordinary ones. None of these 7 items are required for a good life. People lived meaningful, stable lives long before they existed in their current forms. The idea that they are necessities is a recent invention, and one that benefits sellers far more than buyers. When you eliminate or reduce these purchases, something subtle happens. Your financial life becomes calmer, fewer payments, less pressure, more margin. That margin is where investing becomes possible, consistent, and sustainable. Wealth does not require perfection. It requires alignment. When your spending aligns with long-term goals instead of short-term impulses, time begins to work with you instead of against you. Understanding these 7 categories is not about guilt or regret. It is about awareness. Awareness gives you the ability to choose differently, and those choices compound quietly into outcomes most people never experience. Once unnecessary spending is reduced, the question becomes what to do with the surplus. Wealth is not built by avoiding expenses alone. It is built by consistently redirecting saved money into assets that grow over time. The system itself does not need to be complex. In fact, simplicity is often its greatest strength. The foundation of this system is consistency. Small amounts invested regularly matter far more than large amounts invested occasionally. Time in the market matters more than timing the market. This principle has been proven repeatedly across decades and across different economic conditions. A portion of income should be invested automatically before spending occurs. When investing becomes optional, it often gets postponed. When it becomes habitual, it compounds quietly. Automation removes emotion from the process and replaces it with discipline. Diversification plays a central role. Broad ownership of productive businesses reduces the risk of permanent loss. No single investment needs to be extraordinary. The goal is steady participation in long-term economic growth, not speculation or prediction. Debt should be treated carefully within this system. Debt that produces income or improves productive capacity can be useful. Debt used for consumption creates friction. The more friction present, the harder it becomes for compounding to work effectively. Cash also has a role, not as a long-term wealth builder, but as stability. Adequate reserves prevent forced selling during difficult periods. They allow investments to remain untouched long enough for time to do its work. As this system runs year after year, something changes psychologically. Money becomes less reactive. Decisions become calmer. Short-term volatility loses its power because the direction is clear and the process is trusted. This approach does not rely on intelligence, prediction, or luck. It relies on behavior repeated consistently over long periods. That is why it works for ordinary people willing to remain patient and disciplined. Wealth built this way may appear slow at first, but over time the curve bends. And when it does, the results often seem obvious in hindsight, even though few were willing to follow the process from the beginning. If there is one lesson worth keeping, it is this: wealth is rarely the result of dramatic action. It is the result of quiet restraint repeated over time. The difference between financial struggle and financial freedom is often found not in what you buy, but in what you choose not to buy. Most people believe wealth requires extraordinary effort or intelligence. In reality, it requires avoiding ordinary mistakes. The 7 purchases discussed are common, socially accepted, and emotionally appealing. That is precisely why they are dangerous. They do not fail loudly. They fail slowly. Time does not reward urgency. It rewards consistency. When money is allowed to remain invested uninterrupted, it begins to compound in ways that feel almost unfair. But compounding only works when spending habits stop interfering with it. The goal is not to eliminate enjoyment or comfort. The goal is to sequence them correctly. Security first, flexibility next, optional luxury last. When this order is respected, money becomes a tool rather than a source of stress. If you apply these principles steadily for 10, 20, or 30 years, the outcome becomes predictable. Not because of luck, but because math and behavior tend to produce the same results when repeated long enough. You do not need to change everything at once. Start by noticing, then adjust one decision at a time. Progress that feels small today often becomes life-changing when given enough time. If this way of thinking resonates with you, consider staying connected. Subscribe to the channel, not for excitement, but for clarity. The goal here is not fast growth, but durable understanding. Wealth favors those who are willing to be patient, rational, and consistent. If you are willing to do that, time will eventually stand on your side.